So let's paint a scenario today. Imagine you're standing at a junction. On one side, a new launch is priced at 2.5 million, and on the other side, a resale property is also priced the same. Both have their advantages, but let's have a look into one of the mechanisms that's ingrained into both, which is what we call the progressive payment, or what I also like to call as the dollar cost averaging into the first 4 years, and the importance of hunting for a property that can suit the own stay or investment needs. So what I would like to always share with my client is that it's all about needs versus wants. For resale, it's really quite adamant that it's focusing on the client's needs in terms of the ability to move in immediately or the ability to receive rental proceeds immediately. So these are the immediate things that are more focused on buyers and families' needs. And then we talk about the new build segment, which is more of the wants. I want a brand new property. I want to live comfortably. I want my property to have a certain growth in X number of years. So these are very two distinct factors where you need to ask yourself as a buyer today or a home upgrader, what are your immediate priorities? A lot of buyers, the first question that they get faced by agents are, hey, Mr. Buyer, are you buying for own stay or investment? I always ask myself, is this question still even valid? Because in today's context where we have so much of the ABSD going around, nobody owns the second property these days anymore. So do I even have the luxury to even choose whether it's for own stay or investment? So definitely, I think out of 10 of my buyer consults that I have, 9 of them tell me I want both. It's a given. I mean, don't even ask me this question. Who would buy a property that doesn't want to appreciate in capital growth? Yes, I want to stay, but I naturally also expect the property that I'm buying will have that increased little or more, but the increase is definitely non-negotiable. Okay, so you're essentially buying a home to stay, but I also want an investment upside for the future. So that's where the concept of stay vesting comes in. You're essentially buying a home that you can stay in, but with the right property and location, you also get the investment upside for the future, provided that we use the correct frameworks to select the correct property, facing, stack, and entry pricing. So for resale properties, definitely the benefit is clear. You don't need to rent. Just buy, move in, and you're done. So a lot of buyers, they get faced a question by a lot of agents is that, okay, are you buying for own stay or investment? My answer to this is that, is this question even still valid in today's context? With all the limitations of ABSD and all that sort of stuff, most buyers don't even have the luxury to own more than one. So naturally, but buyer's instinct is, I want both. I want to buy a property that I can stay and also have the flexibility to move in and have the capital growth. Okay, so you're essentially serving a buyer or hope to be a buyer that you're buying a home to stay and naturally also want that investment upside for the future. Now, here's the thing. When I buy into a new build segment, a lot of buyers, they face their immediate challenge, which is having to rent in the meantime. Why do some buyers still even do that? Does it even make sense? With this rental expense that I'm potentially going to incur, is it still going to be better investment potential after all? Okay, so in the next few slides, what I'll be covering very in-depth, in detail, is a concept called progressive payment, with the numbers actually broken down, deep dive into what you realize is that actually what that explains to you why some buyers make certain decisions in a certain way. All right, so new launch condo, progressive payment is also what I like to call a dollar cost averaging strategy to make sure that this still makes sense. It's a hidden opportunity mechanism that is only available for new launches. So now let me break down this $2.5 million purchase for a buyer who's looking to buy into a new build. This is a progressive payment. As of today's recording, the loan to value of the maximum LTV for a purchase is 75% loan to value. So in this context today, for $2.5 million, 75% loan to value is about 1.875 mil. Okay, so I'll just cover the standard timeline first. The front load on the initial 8 weeks is a total of 20% plus the stamp duty. So stamp duty is today assuming a buyer which is just a Singaporean buyer, first home, so don't have to pay ABSD. What I want to bring your attention to is the different milestones and the progressive payment table. So how progressive payment works, if you are not familiar with this whole concept here, is that you only pay based on the construction progress of the project. Okay, so there are a total of 8 different stages in a new build segment, okay, starting from foundation, concrete framework, so on and so forth. You reach to a major milestone, which is what we call the TOP. The TOP is a major milestone because what that means is at that stage, you are able to collect the keys. At the point of time, you could choose to either move in or rent out. And then at this stage, what you realize is that you have not actually incurred the full mortgage payment yet. You actually have 1 year of that warranty period, as I mentioned. Only after that, when you hit your CSC, then that's where your full mortgage payment is. So this example, this illustration is assuming a buyer who has a max 30-year loan tenure. So this is probably a young buyer at 35 years old. As of today, prevailing interest rate is about 2%. So what you realize is that they've based on different progressive payment stages, starting from the foundation, probably be paying a couple of $100 only. But then you progressively pay 1,003 and it goes to 1,008. And then at the next milestone, you're actually at 5,005 and then finally 6,009. Okay, so what actually that means is that compared to a resale property, this is a progressive payment for a new launch property, so you progressively pay the monthly installment. Compared to a resale property, which you will see here, so the initial down payment is the same. So you have your cash and CPF component for your down payment, a total of 25% with your stamp duty. But what's the difference is you don't progressively pay your installment. Actually, what happens is you pay your full mortgage immediately after the completion of your resale property. So what that means is you immediately pay 6,009 the moment you acquire the property or the moment you become the legal owner of the property. So that's the main difference compared to the new launch. Okay, so what I want to share with you is how does these numbers look like when I break it down? Because so a lot of people, they struggle. If I'm gonna be paying rent and I'm also gonna be paying my mortgage, how does that even make sense from a monthly cash flow point of view? So over here, if I just look at the monthly installment for new launch based on the different stages from stage 1 to stage 8, and I compare that with the installment that I would pay if I were to go for a resale property, you realize that there's actually a cash difference in the third column here. And the normal scenario here that today, if you're a buyer, you probably are looking for a rental. If you are going for the new build, you probably set your rental budget approximately about $5,000. And you realize one thing, the cost actually balances out over time. The difference in your installments can actually contribute into your rental. And like I mentioned, it balances over time. The beauty of it, why is this actually doable, is because the installments for the new launch segment is staggered, and that allows you to unlock that mechanism of doing the rental thing. One thing I also didn't mention is that for resale, aside from the installments that you have to pay, there's actually two things that's not factored in, but you should factor that in. The first thing first here is your maintenance fees, which you do have to pay on a monthly basis. Typically, about a 3-bedder would cost you about $400 or $500 in today's market. The second thing is, of course, the property tax, which a new build condo, you don't have to pay property tax, but in a resale condo, you do have to. So what happens is that after 4 years, what you end up with if you go for a new build property is you get a brand new property with a full 99-year lease with modern facilities, and you are in a much better position in the resale market 4 years later compared to buying an older property with a diminishing lease, and furthermore having to renovate if you, let's say, you buy something that is not in a very good condition. So the positioning of your property 4 years later, you always need to think about how does your listing or how your house look like in the resale market? How does it look like comparatively to other options? What is your buyer going to see your house compared to other options? Yeah. If you're really a very big numbers person, I'm just going to spend the next few slides to go deeper into how this whole simulation look like. All right. So again, if I were to look at the left column here, which is the new build, $2.5 million, and the blue column here, also $2.5 million. So this is the BUC versus resale side-by-side comparison. So what I'll be doing, first step here is that I'm taking into consideration the capital growth and the all rental income. So I'm assuming the buyer here is buy for own stay. Okay, so that typically for new build, the properties in the new build segment gets to enjoy an average annual growth of approximately 5% versus a resale property. Typically, there's still growth, but generally slower in terms of its year on year, so about 3%. So this is how the growth will look like. Next, let's take into account all the expenses that's in relation to entering into either categories. Okay, for BUC segment, what you do need to factor in, of course, is your rental. So let's assume a $5,000 a month rental, say for 4 years. What that means is your total rental that you will be incurring is about $240,000 over 4 years. Because of progressive payment, also your interest that you incur over the course of 4 years is about $66,000. Now, the beauty of it is that because this is still currently building, you don't have to incur the following, the maintenance fees, the property tax. It's unlikely that you'll spend a lot on renovation as well. If you were to, it's probably just for own consumption because of very minor kind of styling needs. Versus, if I look at the resale property, now let's break that down. Because you are entering into your full-on mortgage at the very onset, depending on how the interest climate looks like at that point of time, based on today's recording over 4 years, based on this loan quantum, your total interest will be about 113,000. Now, because even if you save on your rental, I mean, you don't have to find a temporary place to stay. What you do need to actually factor that in is your maintenance fees, which approximately, if I'm assuming $500 per month over 4 years, what that looks like is about 24,000 over 4 years. For property tax, based on a $2.5 million property over 4 years, do expect to pay around 18,000. Now, let's assume that you're buying a property that needs a little bit of renovation. In today's context for cost of renovation, about a decent kind of requirement, you change the floors, you do up the toilets, you do a little bit of aircon refreshing and all that. Those kind of works generally tend to cost about $100,000 already. And then, of course, you want to gonna be fitting in your house with furnishings and fittings. Let's assume a $50,000 kind of brand new setup. So if I just were to put in side-by-side comparison, you realize that actually they do not differ too much, right? And then if I just put them summation in total with the overall growth offsetting the expense that you have to take into account, what you realize is that you actually ended off with a better, more healthy, positive figure on the new build side. And if we just look at the return on equity, right? Return on equity is basically your net profit divided by the amount of cash outlay or down payment that you put in. You actually at about 34% versus a resale property that is almost nothing. So this is really quite a deep dive simulation into a new build versus resale segment. So if you are someone who's really into the numbers, feel free to do the same kind of simulation based on whatever property size that you're buying, or you can fine tune these to the loan quantum that you're looking to take or the rental property that you're probably considering to rent, and see whether or not that new build versus resale property still makes sense for you or not.